people fishing all the way up the bank there. 4 or 5 more people. So you can see the dam behind me, absolutely enormous in size. A huge amount of energy, and a huge amount of both social upheaval and environmental degradation. Three Gorges Dam is controversial because the land area that it took to construct the dam, as well as the large reservoir behind the dam created by the dam's impoundment, displaced millions of people, farmers and other villagers throughout central China were forced to move in order to make space for the dam. And it is a huge environmental justice issue. We're gonna go and tour the dam and kind of check out the immensity of the site and think about the environmental justice issues that arise from dam construction when people are dislocated from their homelands. And we'll also think about some of the ecological issues that come along with dam construction, such as impediments to fish passage. The Yangtze River at one time was home to freshwater dolphins, which are now considered extinct here in China. It's a very hazy day, it's difficult to see, but here you get a better shot of the topography of the gorge itself. You can see the steep escarpment coming down, the ridge of the mountains there above, some parts in the clouds, and scanning a bit you see the closer ridgeline there, so you understand why this is an ideal place for a hydroelectric dam, at least topography and geologically speaking. Most of the people forced to move when the Three Gorges Dam was constructed were peasant farmers, very poor, lived in small villages along the banks of the Yangtze. And many of those villages were known for their historic and traditional farming practices, as well as other kind of cultural elements of the communities that live there. I'm standing on the upstream side of the dam. I want you to notice that the riverbank is entirely hardscaped and all the trees have been cut. There is no riparian habitat left here on the Yangtze. The flow of the river has been dramatically reduced, and it's a warm water, low oxygen environment with lots of sediment. The image on the right is Landsat imagery from the U.S. Geological Survey from 2013 after the Three Gorges Dam construction. The image on the left is from 1993, and it shows the Yangtze River prior to the dam's construction. You can see the enormous footprint of the reservoir and imagine the area of land that was inundated and the communities that occurred in that area that were displaced. So the impoundment behind the dam stretches upstream for 660 kilometers, and it's about 800 square kilometers. It displaced about 1.3 million people. At least that's the official number that the government says. Most of those people, about 90%, stayed in the local area. It displaced them either to upper elevations that weren't submerged, or they moved out into nearby villages that were not submerged. And about 10% went east to the industrial areas around Shanghai and Guangzhou, and 1,000 kilometers away. Also moved were lots of cultural sites like temples and archaeological sites and historic villages, and they were moved to nearby locations above the water level. The boats that you see there up against the backside of the dam are collecting trash and debris that floats down the river, flotsam and jetsam, that float down the river so they don't go into the turbine system and jam up the turbines, and they just continually go and collect garbage that's floating down the river. The families that were moved, or the homeowners, residents that were moved, their homes were measured and they were given an allowance based on the area of their homes. But homes were measured in about 1997 and people were moved in about 2008, but they were only paid the 1997 value for their homes, which may have been a lowball number then anyway. So compensation wasn't nearly what it should have been. And then also all the cultural impacts of moving people from their homes and the stress and the loss of cultural value that goes along with that kind of dislocation was just enormous. The construction of hydroelectric dams like Three Gorges Dam dramatically alter the ecosystem types and the habitat variety found in river systems. Here I am on the downstream side of the system. You can see more of the hardscape that continues for kilometers and kilometers downstream as well as upstream. You can also imagine that the warm water, high sediment, low oxygen environment that's created from this dramatically alters the habitat type and biodiversity associated with the rivers. On the other hand, hydroelectric power is in some ways relatively low carbon. There's lots and lots of carbon put into the atmosphere during the construction of a dam because cement is a hugely carbon intensive manufacturing process. But once the dam is running, it's relatively low carbon. And so from a sustainability perspective, hydroelectric dams like this raise some serious questions. While they may be better alternatives to fossil fuel energy, they also bring about major environmental justice and ecological issues.